Today we will discuss the Chapter 11, Chapter 12, Chapter 13, Chapter 14 of Implementing Rules and Regulations of Quarantine Act of 2004 pursuant to RA 9271. Let's start first in Part 11, Measures in Public Health Emergencies of International Concern. Section 53, Preparedness and Response Guidelines. The Bureau of Quarantine shall institute rules and regulations governing the measures for the control of the introduction and spread of public health emergencies of international concern at the port and airport of entry. Next is, in the event of an outbreak of public health emergency of international concern in community, the Director of Bureau shall recommend to the Secretary of Health the following measures for the prevention of transmission and spread of such public health emergency in coordination with Department of Health agencies and other concerned government agencies. Apprehension, detention, isolation, or surveillance of suspect or cases. Next is placed under active or passive surveillance individuals who have been exposed to the infection considered as dangerous contact. And next is to declare an area or community under quarantine where the public health emergency occurs. Next, the Secretary of Health is authorized to mobilize other government agencies for the purpose of preventing the introduction, transmission, and spread of public health emergencies of international concern. Let's proceed to Part 12. Management Protocol for Disease, subject to international health regulation. Section 54. Cholera. Cholera-infected ship or aircraft. General consideration. A ship or an aircraft shall be regarded as infected if during the voyage a case of cholera has occurred or on board. Next is, when coming from a cholera-infected area, a ship or an aircraft on arrival shall be regarded as non-infected if upon inspection by the quarantine medical officer there is no case of cholera that has occurred on board during the voyage. Next is, water carried on board which is considered contaminated shall be disinfected, removed, and the containers shall likewise be disinfected. Next is, human excreta, wastewater, including bilge water, and any matter which is considered to be contaminated shall be properly disinfected under supervision of the Bureau of Quarantine prior to disposal. Next is, unloading of contaminated matters and waste shall be in accord with the anti-pollution law under the supervision of the Bureau of Quarantine in coordination with the other concerned agencies. Next is, person engaged in the unloading of such contaminated materials shall be subject to surveillance for a period not exceeding 5 days from the time they cease unloading. Management of cholera-infected person or suspect. First, medical examination of crew and passengers. Next, patients shall be disembarked, isolated, and treated. Cases manifesting the clinical symptoms of disease in which no cholera vibrio organism has been found or in which vibrios found are not characteristics of cholera vibrio shall be considered as actual patients and treated as such. Next is, cholera suspects on arrival shall be disembarked, placed under surveillance, and treated. They shall be released only when three successive bacteriological examination of their stools have been found to be negative. Next is, vaccination with oral cholera vaccine to travelers when requested. Lastly is, baggage of any infected person or suspect and any other items which is considered contaminated shall be disinfected. Section 55. Plug infected or suspected ship or aircraft. General consideration. A ship or an aircraft on an arrival shall be regarded as plague infected if it has a case of human or rodent plague on board. A ship on arrival shall be regarded as suspected if it has no case of human plague on board, but there is an abnormal death among rodents on board with unknown cause. Next is, a ship or an aircraft coming from a plague-infected area shall be regarded as non-infected if an inspection, the conditions specified in the preceding paragraphs A, B, do not exist. Next is a ship or an aircraft shall be subjected to fumigation under any of the following: A, with human or rodent plague on board; B, with moderate or heavy rodent infestation coming from plague-infected area. Next, management of plague-infected person or suspect. Medical examination of crew passengers. Patients with plague shall be disembarked, isolated, and treated. Asymptomatic suspect will be placed in quarantine or placed under surveillance for a period of not more than 6 days from the date of exposure. And lastly is baggage of a plague-infected person or suspect and any other items or part of the ship or aircraft considered to be contaminated shall be disinfected. Section 56, Yellow Fever. Yellow fever infected or suspected ship or aircraft. General consideration. A ship or aircraft shall be regarded as yellow fever infected if it has a case of yellow fever on board. Next is a ship or aircraft shall be regarded as suspected if disinfection was not performed satisfactorily and live mosquitoes are found on board. Any persons over 1 year of age coming from a yellow fever infected area must possess a valid yellow fever immunization certificate upon arrival in the country. Likewise, travelers to yellow fever infected countries must also possess a valid yellow fever vaccination certificate. Next is any person arriving from a yellow fever infected area without a valid certificate of vaccination against the disease shall be placed in quarantine for a period of not more than 6 days, reckoned from the last possible exposure or departure from the affected area. Management of yellow fever infected person or suspect. Medical examination of all passengers and crew. Next is temperature of all passengers and crew may be taken when necessary. Any persons under observation presenting a fever above 38 degrees Celsius shall be isolated in a screened room. Next is the person afflicted by the disease shall be immediately disembarked, isolated, and protected by netting against the access of mosquitoes. Next is the ship or aircraft shall be inspected and subjected to vector control measures on board, and until such measures have been carried out, a vessel shall be considered in quarantine. Next is the vessel or aircraft shall be disinfected against mosquitoes before the discharge of cargo. The discharge of cargo shall be under the supervision of the quarantine medical officer and may be carried out by vaccinated persons. If unvaccinated persons are employed, they shall be kept under surveillance for 6 days, reckoned from the last day of exposure on board. Part 3. Medical clearance of foreigners for immigration purposes. Section 57. Medical examination of foreigners or aliens for immigration purposes. As the medical arm of the Bureau of Immigration pursuant to RA 997 of 1954, as amended by RA 1241 of 1955, the Bureau of Quarantine is mandated to conduct physical and medical examination of foreigners or aliens seeking residency in the country is a prerequisite to the issuance of their corresponding visa by the Bureau of Immigration. Next is classification of defects and diseases of foreigners or aliens which are subject to administrative disposition by the Bureau of Immigration. Class A. Classification that a foreigner has a communicable disease of public significance and or has a physical or mental disorder that may pose or has posed a threat to the property, safety, or welfare to himself or to others. Class B. A classification that a foreigner has physical or mental abnormality, disease, or disability serious in degree or permanent resulting to a substantial departure from his or her normal well-being which may affect his ability to earn living. Class C. A classification that a foreigner is affected with any condition properly classified as physical defect or disease which is minor or transient in nature and not likely to affect his ability to earn a living. Next, only a regular quarantine medical officer can issue the medical clearance of foreigner or aliens. And next, examination requirements for foreigner or aliens: chest X-ray, serology, stool examination, urine examination, other examination when necessary. And last part, Part 14, Utilization of Income. Section 58, authority to utilize at least 50% of the income to prescribe the guidelines related to the implementation of Section 9 of the Quarantine Act of 2004 RA 9271 quoted as follows. Section 9, authority to utilize income. The Bureau of Quarantine shall be authorized to use at least 50% of the income generated, subject to accounting and auditing rules and regulations. The 50% income generated shall be retained and constitute as a trust fund to augment the requirements of the Bureau for the maintenance and other operating expenditures and capital outlays, provided, however, no amount in the said trust fund shall be used for the payment of salaries and other allowances and benefits in cash or in kind. Next is the Bureau of Quarantine shall maintain separate books of accounts to cover the receipt and utilization of all income collected pursuant to the usual budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules and regulations. Next, such income as enumerated below, which shall be referred to as quarantine income in this section, shall be constituted as trust fund and shall be deposited in any authorized government depository bank. First, vaccination fees. Next is laboratory fees, derating fees, service fees, fines, and penalties. Next, the interest income arising from the trust fund shall be remitted to the Bureau of Treasury. Next is the other 50% shall be treated as income in general fund to be remitted to the Bureau of Treasury. Next is the utilization of the income shall be approved by the Director of Quarantine upon the recommendation of Management Committee of the Bureau in the form of a resolution, copy furnished the Office of the Secretary of the Department of Health and the Department of Budget and Management. And lastly is the Bureau of Quarantine shall submit to the Department of Budget and Management, copy furnished to the Office of the Secretary of the Department of Health, a quarterly report of estimated income collection and utilization, and a status of actual quarterly income collection and utilization as indicated in Annex C and C1, certified correct by Bureau Budget Officer and Accountant respectively, recommended by the Management Committee and approved by the Head Office. That's all. Thank you.